Well, this is a Good Friday morning, and we're trying to make it really good by contacting Pat and getting him to give some part of his wisdom to the masses. How are you, Pat? Is your brain in good working form this morning?
Well, I wouldn't know about that, but yeah, it's Good Friday. We were just chatting before we came on air.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember Good Friday. I remember for some reason a Good Friday way back in the South in the Republic was a very strange day when I was a child. For instance, I remember we used to have this religious ceremony that started at 3 o'clock up in St. Eunice Cathedral in County, and it went on to about 5. And Jude, I remember at the time, maybe it's not unique, but I remember when we used to be very depressed, and I used to find it actually quite traumatic. You know, all this thing about crucifixion and scourging and about the death of Jesus. I remember being actually quite upset with it all. I remember thinking, this is horrible, something about it. And I never quite got it right in my head. You know, I mixed up the religion, but there was a terrible sadism about the whole thing that
Hmm,
I really didn't like. I genuinely didn't like, by the way. I'm not putting this
hmm,
on. At
hmm.
the time, feeling this is horrible. It was
Yeah.
almost as if, this was all right. And it seemed, I could never figure out how this religion of love and charity was based or founded on the death of a man in such a horrible way. And that it was all, and that what happened to him was almost all right because it absolved us from our sins.
Well,
Horrible.
I never quite understood that doctrine of
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus having suffered for us, so we
Suffered
be
so much for us.
relieved of our
And all
sins.
that. And there's another thing as well, and then let's go sort of the more mundane. All the shops were shut, the pubs were shut, everything was shut. And I remember even I think nearly in my house, my father and mother were that old conservative. They might have put on the TV later on even, but it certainly wasn't on during the day or anything like that. So on. So it was a very different day, and the whole thing. I like it. I look back now. If I walked down the road 40 yards from where I'm living now, life would be going on today as normal.
Hmm.
And the Republic there a couple of years back, they dropped the things about closing the pubs and the clubs and all the rest. So now everybody's away shopping, and if
Yeah.
I fancied a pint later on this evening, there's a hotel
Uh,
down the road. I could go down there and so on. It's like
yeah.
so different, but it's very very different now from
Uh,
when I was growing up. What about
One
for
thing
you?
I wonder, Pat, if your thing like you talked about the Stations of the Cross, I think at 3 o'clock on a Good Friday in St. Eunice
Yeah,
Cathedral. I don't think as a family we normally did that, but I can remember a couple of occasions we did. And I wonder if it was the fact that you were in a cathedral, which is a big kind of an echoing place
yeah,
and full of dark shadows. And Omagh Church was the Sacred Heart Church in Omagh was the exact same. Many people said, "Oh, that's as big as most cathedrals," and yeah, that's big high roof and echoing and
yeah,
darkness. And then the priest would go around and describe each. You'd have to pray.
yeah,
I don't know, an Our Father and a Hail Mary. Um, it's kind of odd, Pat. You said, what does this to do? What had this to do with the love and so on of Jesus? But back then there was no talk about love. There was sort of in a prayer maybe, but it wasn't. It was keeping free of sin and watching you didn't go to hell. Uh,
yeah,
that was the order of the day. I really found it a gloomy time, I must say, and I
yeah,
breathed, as I said earlier, a sigh of relief when you get out of the church,
yeah.
and when eventually you'd waken up on Saturday morning, which very often was a fine Saturday morning, and somehow
Yeah.
it was the beginning of something good. But then again, I wonder, maybe we shouldn't go on to it too much, but you can't dodge bits of something like the story of Christianity. I mean, the crucifixion is a pretty important part of it.
Yeah.
It'd be it'd be like telling a kid, that their lives were going to all be, sweet and loving and no problems at all. I don't think we'd do that for a kid. The
Yeah.
same.
Judd, would you watch even if you saw it on TV a public execution? You know,
No,
you
no,
wouldn't. Like
no,
it's
no,
no, no.
no.
I would find that very disturbing. I really
Yeah,
genuinely would. And
yeah.
yet, when I was a wee kid, I was asked to take part. Well, not participate is probably the wrong word, but I was an observer of
Mm.
what was going on, and
Mm.
so on. And
And there were
like maybe,
pictures
by
around
the
the
way,
12 stations. The
yeah,
pictures.
there's this big. for about 2 hours. I remember, and you start reading parts of the gospel, and you actually remember at one stage you stood up, there's maybe a narrator and three other participants, and
uh,
this reading of the gospels or whatever went on for about 20 minutes, and it was heavy duty stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't know how old people could stand up for it, because I was quite young at the time, and I remember that by the time it was finished, I was knackered.
It's strange. It's an interesting one to look back on. I suppose I'm very glad that things are as positive as they are now. I just wonder if
Yeah,
we maybe lurched a little bit towards the other extreme, where we'll say,
yeah,
really,
well, that's a possibility. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all
yeah,
good, it's all good. And besides which factor, somebody said to me one time, we understand things by their opposite. You really
yeah,
appreciate a good day because the previous day was pouring rain. And
yeah,
you
yeah.
really enjoy fags when you've been off them for Lent, and you light up on.
You'd always like that one. So that was the first time I'd ever heard the expression. Remember Heinrich Bohl, the German writer. He had
Yeah.
this thing. He called it. I think they were basically, the English version was called the Ireland Diaries. After the war, he had come to Ireland or sometime. I'm not certain it was after, but he had come to Ireland, and he claimed Ireland was Germany's other. And somebody asked him what did he mean by that. He said in Germany, if a man was going to work, he would be there. If he starting 8 o'clock, he'd be there at 8:15, and so on. And in Ireland, if a man was going to work and he heard somebody playing music in the pub, he'd go and sit and have a pint and arrive about 11 o'clock. That type of thing. In other words, and he loved that, the fact that people just were a bit more spontaneous. Now you can understand why Germany had the biggest economy in the world at the time, and we were still exporting sheep. But
Well,
anyway, that's enough.
I sort of admire that, but the only thing is,
Yeah.
I keep thinking of the occasions when I need a tradesman, like a plumber or something, or
Yeah.
a guy who's going to fix something for me, and he comes and he looks at it and says, "Oh, that's fine. I'll be back tomorrow, and I'll look at that." And you find I don't hear from him for about 2 weeks. I mean, it's all
Yeah,
very
I've been in
jolly,
that.
but you do need.
That's not even an exaggeration. I've been in that situation. Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
it's not all fun. The guy just ducking out and
No, 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 exactly
all the
not. Yeah,
pints. There's something to be said for a bit of German order in life.
yeah,
Okay, let's
yeah.
move to the items that we've plucked from the headlines. And one of the ones that caught your eye was this national quotation marks national anthem that was sung at Windsor Park, I think, was it? Was it that
No, it was in Scotland.
in
It
Scotland?
was
Okay, sorry.
Hampton. Jude, how do you laugh? It was a big issue. It got a lot of traction on social media. You see that all these national teams. I think the Welsh national anthem is Men of Harlech or something.
Yeah.
Scotland goes Flower of Scotland,
Oh, it's a
and
lovely,
England
lovely
goes God
tune.
Save the King. Uh,
Mm.
Northern Ireland, of course, been more loyal than anywhere else. Also goes for God Save the King. So over on Wednesday night or Tuesday night, and I think it was Wednesday night, Northern Ireland were playing Scotland, and when they started playing God Save the King for Northern Ireland as the visiting team first, there was massive boos, and some people try to downplay it. It was heavy duty booing. It wasn't just a few isolated boos, and so on. And even some of the commentators sort of mentioned it, and so on. Anyway, and then of course they started to sing "Flower of Scotland," and the Scots were giving it loyalty. They were giving it everything they got, and so on. But anyway, the whole thing got up then afterwards. A lot of the TUV people are just disrespectful. But Jude,
Yeah.
let's go for the macro rather than the micro. The macro suggests, hey, Jude, the whole thing about a United Kingdom is in deep, deep. I'll use the word shit because that's what it seems to be. The Scots are definitely they. I think Boris Johnson, that cohort of arrogance and so on, buffoonery, and the way that the contempt in which he had for the Scots and what he had for the Scottish Parliament has
Uh,
done a great job for Scottish National. Now the Scottish Nationalist Party have done a fair job of imploding, but anyway, let's stick with the main
uh,
thesis. Right. So the Scots have a major, major issue with the United Kingdom. That's for a fact. It's at
mm,
every level. The Welsh, now about a third of them, are increasingly more nationalistic and so on. And now, and our little part of the world, for the first time ever, the last elections, now the nationalist Catholic end is the majority. So, Jude, go and ask yourself, if you were looking in as a political observer from the outside, what from those ruins would you take?
I think your analysis is pretty spot on. There is a weakening and a creaking. You can almost hear it of the United Kingdom, if not tearing itself apart, then gradually easing away. Mind you, we're talking about a football game, and
Yeah.
if you think about club games in England or in Ireland for that matter, I'm sure it's not uncommon for people to whistle and boo the other side's anthem, regardless of what it is. So, in a sense, you might say that there's nothing. It might have been nothing personal about
Jude,
the
hold on.
booing. Maybe it's just
There's
business.
only.
Just
Hang on, now
business.
let me contradict you. Excuse me, Doctor. Let me contradict you. There's
I was
only
going to make a comparison with
and
the
that
Godfather there. You
wouldn't be a
remember? Nothing
there's only
personal.
one other club. There's only one club in England. Boos, God save the king, Liverpool. No, you can take that away. You weren't comparing like with like there. So, gun make of that what you will.
Well, I remember when Scotland was playing England in the mid-70s, I think it was, about 77. And you remember, well, you'd have been too young, Pat, but they beat the English. They beat the English team, or they drew with them or something like that. Anyway, they weren't beating themselves. And the Scots were so delighted. I remember the commentator saying, "Oh, there's a guy up on top of the crossbar.
The
That's
crossbar, and they broke the
dangerous."
crossbar. Yeah, yeah.
And they dismantled the goals as
They took the goalposts with them.
souvenirs.
Yeah, 7 years.
So that went back a long time, you see, and I think many Scottish people are kind of openly, if they know that England is playing a football game against anybody, they're like the Irish. They say, "Oh, I'll suddenly be a Ukrainian supporter or a Polish supporter or a Spanish supporter or whatever." So I don't know if that's all that new, but you feel that maybe it has more of an edge to it now than
Well, I don't ever remember a Scottish crowd booing "God Save the King." I really genuinely don't. And Liverpool started a couple of years back, and somebody, the guy, I can't remember. He's a professor or an academic anyway. The guy, is it full Scottish? Can't remember. The Hillsborough.
yeah,
He led the task force that did a big lot of research, and somebody asked
yes,
him one time, and he said, following the Hillsborough disaster and the way Liverpool was treated, and the way Liverpool was treated by Thatcher. Remember she said it was quite if the docks died and the shipping died, so it was a price worth paying type thing. She had no time for Liverpool,
mm,
and so on. So he says there's a detestation of what they see as the London establishment, and of which the royal family are part of, so on.
mm,
And
mm.
when Liverpool is the only club that still boos "God Save the King." Now, can you imagine if Shamrock Rovers were the only club in Ireland that booed Iran Naveen? There's something growing there, and
Uh,
Scotland is now booing it. And I think there's something that we should read into that maybe has not been. What do you call these sociologists? Maybe somebody should have a
yeah.
look at what's the meaning of all this.
Well, I would partly agree with you, and I'd certainly like to agree with you, but I just have the back of my mind that when teams are being supported, the spectators will reach for any insult they can think of to sort of make the other team feel bad. I think that's an awful lot
Yeah,
of, for example, the racism you hear chanted. It's
yeah.
it's actually not that they hate people who are black or brown or whatever. It's just that they see this as a weak point in the other team, so will really slag them, and that'll make them feel unhappy. Uh,
Yeah, there's an element of truth in that. I'm not arguing that. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I've always liked the Liverpool people. I really have. I like the one of the great things I think they've done is they simply won't buy the Sun newspaper. Most self-respecting Liverpoolians will not buy the Sun newspaper
I
because of the
remember
way
I was a Paul O'Grady, the comedian, said Liverpool was just another part of Ireland. And remember, he came out with a great joke one time. He says, "What? No," he says, "What's the difference between a wake and a wedding and Liverpool?" And he says, "A wake, one less."
Very good, very good. Do you remember,
Yeah,
like speaking of Irish, like if you look at the Beatles, at least three of them have got Irish roots.
Irish. Yeah, yeah. Seriously, Irish. Sure, even the
And
names Lennon and McCartney,
aye,
totally Irish names.
What do you think of what you remember? Do you remember that the banning of that Give Ireland Back to the Irish? Do you remember the banning?
Yeah, yeah.
Why has that never been made more of? I wonder. Because it was
Yeah.
such a blatant thing to do, such a stupid sort of thing to do.
Uh,
And there are interviews on tape if you look through YouTube carefully enough, and you'll find McCartney saying, I think the English should just get out.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
like
Yeah, sure, John Lennon wrote the song "Give Ireland Back to the Irish," didn't he?
no, it was McCartney wrote that one.
Oh, was that McCartney?
Yeah,
Sorry, my
yeah, yeah,
apologies.
yeah. But anyway, Liverpool is a different place. There's no doubt about it. Another thing, finally, is they really have what would you describe it as? A kind of a community devotion to their team.
Yeah, yeah,
Even when they're beaten, when they're being beaten, and it's the last 5 minutes, whatever, you'll still hear them crying, "We love you, and we'll support you evermore,"
yeah.
and so on.
Uh,
Just
well, you see that started with Shankly. He's Bill Shankly. He said socialism was the only thing that he understood. He says he didn't understand. He says we're part of a community, and he made Liverpool part. He said to the players apparently before they went out on a Saturday, "We're here not." He says we're representing. He says those people work down the mines, they work on the docks, they work on all the rest of it, and so on.
mm,
And he says we're here on a Saturday afternoon to entertain them. This is what they work so hard for, and their lives are hard. Some of them are struggle, live in poverty, live in bad housing. The one highlight of their week, and he took it as a social imperative that their job was to entertain these people and make their lives better. And he
uh,
imbued that into the club. It's the spirit of the club. You know that thing, "You'll Never Walk Alone." They took that on board, even though it was a song from a musical. But it's and they've loved it. Klopp, the reason Klopp is so successful and so much
yes,
loved, is
yes.
he copped that on right away. And he,
Mm.
by the way, okay, he's well paid, but apparently he is. He loves the source. He loves the
Oh, yeah.
values of it, and he believes in it.
Yeah, and as far as I know, they get the players to be involved in different things with the public
Yeah,
and
yeah,
support causes and so on. I think that's rather wonderful, actually.
yeah,
Well, I was reading a book, Pat. I don't know what you know about Hugo Chavez, the
yeah.
guy who was the president of
Venezuela.
Venezuela. But
Mm.
I'm reading a book for a book club. It's called The Revenge of Power, and it's looking at
Yeah,
just written recently, and it's looking at the way in which autocracy and dictatorship and right wingness is growing all over the world, even let
yeah,
alone Europe.
yeah,
Um, and I mean, what it's saying is something that I'm very interested in, and I agree with. But they listed some of the what they declared were these examples of sort of dictators or autocrats, at least, in South America. And in the middle of them, they included the name of Hugo Chavez.
yeah,
See, I- it's what it is this. It's when you know a wee bit about something and you look at a
yeah,
report on it, you begin to see cracks in it. I remember
yeah,
reading Time magazine. I used to think Time magazine did the greatest writing and summary of any world events.
yeah,
And one time they did a thing about Ireland. And I found myself disagreeing right, left, and center because I knew some stuff about it. I think
yeah.
the same thing applies to this Hugo Chavez because they have him lumped in with a bunch of dictators.
Dictators. Yeah,
Chavez did some fantastic work with, well, it was two things he did. One was he concentrated on the people who had no money, the terrible
yeah,
poverty that was in Venezuela, and made sure that the oil money was used to provide livable conditions for them in terms of health,
yeah,
literacy, and so on. I think that is fantastic. And we so
yeah,
rarely see that kind of thing. And of course, then he was disgraced and, eventually died. But I tend to think that in his case, it was the US was planning because they didn't, he was,
I don't know not about it, but what I do remember was the US put on an embargo on Venezuela. They
hmm,
deliberately tried to orchestrate a coup against your man, Chavez. They also fixed, if I remember correctly, Venezuela has the richest reserves of oil in the world,
yeah.
which is an amazing thing to say. But the Americans deliberately screwed the price of
uh,
oil so that Chavez, the Venezuelan economy then crashed and on. But it was
hmm.
thanks to it's like what they did in Cuba to ensure that communism didn't infect the good old capitalist state. So you have to. Somebody always says to me, communism failed. I always said I would love to know how it would have might have worked had it not been interfered with. Now, no one ever is going to tell me Russia is. Now we're getting off topic totally, but nobody's ever going to tell me Russia was pure communism, and it was just another form of dictatorship.
I just find it very interesting that both Cuba and Venezuela, they upped the literacy rate fantastically over a very short
and
period of time.
Jude, and what is it? Cuba has more doctors per head than any place in South America. And the other thing as well, Jude, the Cubans were able to come up with their own vaccines for COVID. They didn't need the Western world.
Have you ever said that to an American, Pat? If you ever had the conversation I'm having? Neither would I. I wouldn't get into it because I think it runs so deep that even intelligent people in the States are convinced that the vision of Cuba and the vision of Venezuela under Chavez was, rotten to the core and misleading people and so on. That seems to be terrible.
What do you call it? They believe Joe Biden's left wing. I don't know. There's something about there's no that sort of frontier spirit. That whole thing. They still think having guns is a great idea. They would nearly go back to public executions. The way they, it's almost that frontier mentality. They still think, everybody's entitled to a gun. You're entitled to shoot your enemies, and all that sort of stuff. I guess not individually, but there's a mentality that they're half civilized in many ways.
That's true. It's that frontier thing. There's a good series you should watch if you get a chance, Pat. It's on Paramount Plus, and it's called Deadwood. And it's sort of the West opening up, and it gives you the grubbiness and the horribleness of what it was really like. But there's a lot. Well, we're right off topic now, but I have to say that I really wish that the kind of books shouldn't take assumptions that the point of view they're coming from must be the only one. This notion that, for example, you must see things from a capitalist point of view, and if you're not, you're mad.
Just to finish on what you're saying, I remember the point you make about when you know something. Jacob Rees-Mogg was considered a real academic, really whatever. And one day he was talking about Ireland, and he made about 3 basic errors. And I thought, you're talking bollocks, and so on. And I just remember thinking, and this guy is considered a real expert. I know people in Sky are listening to this guy. He was so far off. One of the things he said, Leo Varadkar, he has his own difficulties in an election coming up. The election was over. Leo had won, and he had about 3 years to go or 4 years to go. And I was thinking, this is absolute rubbish. Sorry, Jude.
Let's move on. It makes you wonder what other stuff we're sucking in, and accepting as gospel.
Exactly.
Because the few things we know a wee bit about, bloody hell, it blasts the whole argument out of the water. Anyway, okay, let's get on to your second thing you noted, Pat, was the latest YouGov poll with regard to reform.
I thought it was hilarious. The Tory party is almost on meltdown. It's so bad now. They think they're going to. Remember a couple of weeks back, Nadine Dorries says bring back Boris because he might save up to 80 seats. Now, apparently, Rishi Sunak is under serious pressure from certain quarters to give Nigel Farage either a peerage or make him ambassador to America because they're scared he's going to now take over reforms. And some places apparently are only 1 to 2 percentage points now behind the Conservatives, and it will be disasterville for the Tories if they come in. So Labour is now so far ahead and all the rest of it. So Jude, isn't it amazing? I think we might be talking about the lurch to the right, but Britain, the Tories are in total retreat. I think their experiment with the Boris Johnson. So I think Dermot Ferder made the point that Boris was he came across as this. It was deliberately manufactured. This Boris the buffoon, and was great for electorate, but he hadn't a clue what to do when he got into power, and he was manipulated by just about everybody else. That he didn't have that brain the size of a planet. That this was one of the myths about him. That he was actually. He was no deep intellectual. He was quite shallow, really. But he was great for the photo opportunity, but not for making the big political decision. Jude, I think the Tories have now, You know, the outworking of Boris's little experiment has left them totally exposed.
Are they going to? I mean, it does seem to be that they're absolutely. It's only a question of how many seats they lose, or
Yeah.
if they gain any, or if they get any at all. They are in such bad shape, and I mean, this Mark, you remember, this is with the opposition being Sir Keir Starmer's party.
Armor, aye,
God's
yeah,
sake, because I mean, I think they're ridiculous. Wasn't your woman Angela, what's her name,
Rayner,
being screwed
Rayner.
for having maybe been deceptive, or they're claiming she was deceptive
Yeah,
about
but
some
you
house
know
she sold?
what do you call it? That was
Angela
she's
Rayner.
getting about taxing her house, but apparently she said she got both legal advice and tax advice
Yeah.
before whatever, and she says she is 100% certain, unless something has changed, that she's done it right. And apparently, what do you call him? Starmer has been given all information. He says he's 100% behind her. And Rayner came out with a great line. She says, if the Tories want me to go back 15 years of my tax, I am more than willing to do it on the basis that Rishi Sunak and everybody else does
Does the
theirs.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was a killer line, all right. But the point I was making there was that I don't think very highly of the Labour Party, and yet,
Not
they're
at all.
galloping away. They're galloping away with the election. It's just a question of how many percentage points or how many
Jude,
seats.
isn't there sometimes the fortunes of a political leader are not because he's a great leader himself, but the other people are so damn bad. And
Aye.
Keir Starmer, that wall in front of me that I'm looking at just has probably got more personality than Starmer. But the Tories are imploding, and it's his lucky day.
Well, even about it's funny you say that. I agree with you that his personality is like, just as you say, the wall. But
Uh,
we're not looking. I don't mind if he doesn't have a personality. Just have some
yeah,
policies and have some
yeah.
principles. Those are the
He's
things that I
Stuart,
really
he's
look.
absolutely spineless. The difference between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, there are two Conservative parties, except one uses an uppercase C at the start of theirs. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Do you think by the way, you think that the Tories would be so shameless as to give a peerage to Nigel Farage or make him ambassador to America?
absolutely.
Do you really? Would people not say this is
Nothing's
ridiculous?
beneath their yeah. Jude, they will do anything to stay in power or will get their seats back. They're shameless, absolutely shameless.
But would they not think the public might, it might be an adverse backlash, and people would say, "For God's sake, we can see what you're up to here." They'd end up with
when they
even
were
less
willing to
seats.
when they were willing to suspend what I call it, law. Remember what do you call the guy? It was the Northern Secretary. We will suspend international law in a sort of confined way. Remember, he said, in other words,
Oh
about
yeah,
Brexit, they were going to,
yeah.
if they're willing to break promises, break treaties, they're willing to do this.
Yeah. Okay, Justine McCarthy. This is a story I noticed. Justine McCarthy has an article today in the Irish Times, and she really wallops into the Shinners. She makes them part of this thing of where the parties in general in the South are rushing rightwards, and it says that Sinn Féin have they voted for, they were in favour of this criminal justice incitement to violence
Hate
or
speech bill, yeah,
hate
yeah.
bill, and then now they've sort of done a flop on that. And then Mary Lou was all for these referendums, and now she's saying, no, I don't think they're such a good
She's
idea.
backpedaled on that as well.
And she
Yeah.
promised that if they didn't, did she say if they didn't win it, that she would see to it if she was
Yeah,
made
she
chief whip?
says the two referendums. If the government didn't win it, that she would take it back and rerun them with the wording from the Citizens' Assembly.
Yeah. I
But she's
wonder,
backpedaled on that now.
what do you think, is this just a series of attacks on the policies and the things that they're doing on Sinn Féin? Is this something new, or are they? I mean, is Sinn Féin slipping, because they have slipped in the polls? Is it
I
possible they will lose the next election just as they won the previous one, so to speak?
Jude, it is. I think Justine McCarthy's criticism is totally legitimate. Jude, I heard a guy on, I can't remember his name now, on RT, a Sinn Féin guy. I can't off the top of my head. And Jude, he was struggling all over the place to justify. They did do an about face on it. They were all in favour of it, and I think it was April last year on the report stage, and now they want it scrapped totally. Now,
Here, Pat, I want to say this. Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say this.
yeah, go ahead.
I looked at what that report said, yes, and they did say they were in favour of the referenda, and then the public totally rejected them, and now they're saying, yeah, that's okay. Well, then in that case, we're with you.
Yeah.
Isn't that reasonable for a party to change its policy in the light of changed circumstances? It now knows that the vast majority of people there just don't want this. So
Yeah, no,
be not
that's
pig-headed to say, we said before that we were in favour, so I don't care what you guys think, we're still in favour of it.
Richard, why don't they say that? Just said, look, we were wrong. The public, but you see, the point is, Jude, they said one thing and now they're backpedaling on it, and also they have misjudged the mood a wee bit. But Jude, here's the thing: no, that sort of catch-all party like Fianna Fáil was in the 1960s and 70s.
Yeah,
You can't keep jumping about the public mood. That day's gone. Sinn Féin need to stick to what they believe in. No, the way Fine Gael, Michael Ring, he's a sort of weather bell or weather vane of the of Fine Gael, and
yeah.
he's saying they're losing support this last while, and that's why, because they keep changing, they keep tacking to different directions and so on. He says we need to go back to core values, and core values for Michael Ring means going more right wing. The old hang him and flog him and law and order party that Fine Gael under Leo Varadkar had become a very mixed bag. They were liberal in some things and hard right in the others, and all the rest of it. Sinn Féin need to be careful they don't, swing with the one on various issues. I think the public should know where they stand and then know they aren't going to change. That's
Mm.
the problem. And Jude, they're going to see come the election. They can't keep swinging about.
Mm. I often think that well, there's two things. One is the kind of personality that comes through of the individual Sinn Féin TD. Don't know who, I've forgotten his second name now, but he was on Talkback with William Crawley, and he struck me as a very intelligent guy. I forgot what the topic was he was talking about, but he came across very well informed, quiet, and just a very the kind of guy you'd sort of warm to simply by the personality that came through. And he talked good sense as well. I wonder, are political parties their own worst enemy? Because it seems to me that the obvious thing is this: there's going to be an election, probably before the end of the year, probably in the autumn in the south. Why aren't all of the parties, but particularly Sinn Féin, because you say they flop around, why aren't they sitting down, working out about 5 bullet points of central ideas, just clearly stated, and presented to people, and if necessary, a second sentence saying what they would do if they were in office? Because again and again, it becomes very vague. Like this referenda, nobody seemed to know what the hell they were saying, what they were looking for.
No.
Well, that's an insult to the public, like to say, we'll talk to you, but we don't expect you to understand.
Right. Jude, without question, Jude, the whole thing this last while has been a bit ridiculous. But no, you're dead right. If Sinn Féin sat down and said, "Look, this is what we're going to do. This about housing. We're going to do this about education. We're going to do this about infrastructure, etc., etc., etc.," and stick to it. I think. By the way, I don't think it's like their hole below the waterline or anything like that. I think it's just this last while. It's given their opponents a very useful stick to beat them with, that they have shifted. Like, Jude, they can't turn around and say they didn't support the government in regards to two referendums. They mightn't have been out there out front, cheering for it, but there was support in the background. So they're lumped in with the government there. So they got that wrong. And you're dead right. Any sensible party would say, "Wait a minute, look at the vote against this, 70% there and so on." There's not, and even if you change the words, it's highly unlikely it will make a much difference anyway. So it is smart politics, but they have changed their position on it. Maybe Mary Lou shouldn't have said. Maybe the mistake was Mary Lou saying originally that she would rerun them if they got into government.
No, why not just say the obvious thing to say, look, We believed that before this. And we look at this
Yeah.
now and we can see that was rubbish because the public
Yeah,
see
well,
things differently.
I'm agreeing with you totally. Maybe
Accept
these,
it.
rather than sort of rather than trying to weasel their way out, it would just come straight
Yeah.
out and say, right, the public have spoken. We're a
Mhm.
democratic party.
Mhm.
We will not be rerunning this.
Pat, there's something so exciting times coming up. When are the local elections, I wonder, in the north? And
And a couple of months'
May,
time,
is it?
the European, and what do you call it? I think it's about June.
Ah,
And then what do you call the official, the general election will have to take place before March 2025.
well, somebody said there isn't a chance of them running to their final, despite what Michael Martin says, no chance will they run to March because, oh yeah, I think it was Ivan Yates, he said, nobody wants to go out in that kind of weather. And the people were resented that they called it at that stage. Okay, we're out of time, Pat. Do you want to give I was going to say a papal blessing, but maybe a Paschal blessing?
No, Jude, I'll leave you with this one. Apparently, Russia has got so denuded of equipment that they are now using 40-year-old tanks in Ukraine. One of the tanks that was shown the last day was last seen in Chernobyl. So that's despite all the claims that everything is going so well.
Well, there's a cheerful thought.
There's a cheerful
Schadenfreude,
thought they leave it. But, yeah.
Schadenfreude. Okay, Pat, thanks very much.
All the best, Jude. See you
Okay,
later.
happy Easter to you and all
And
our
to you, and to
viewers.
everybody out there.
Yeah, all throngs.